Trust the process. Pain is power. All great things take time. I am unbreakable. Unbreakable.
And what I really admire about you is what you've been able to build, especially in the fitness community, right? And, you know, as I've listened to many podcasts that you were in, is how you genuinely care about your clients. And it's more than just, you know, your client. It's building that hospitality for them and really caring, you know, if they're going through issues and how you can help them. So I'm super excited to really dive in. And, you know, before I go deep into, you know, what led you to entrepreneurship and led you into fitness, I really want to touch base on a little bit of your childhood, your adulthood, and then we'll transition from there. You know, as I mentioned, the name, we're unbreakable. So I really want to, you know, understand like what makes you unbreakable. What are some pain points that you had to endure to get you to where you are? And I know, you know, there may be people that are listening right now that may not be fully aware of your story, but if we can take it back just a little bit. And then-
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's funny as I have some success in business or whatever success I have anyway. And I do more of these podcasts. I've noticed some things from my childhood that I never really paid attention to before. And so one of those things that I think had a huge impact on me was at a young age, my dad was taking us backpacking. And so he just loved to do it. He just wanted to get outside and go hike around Yosemite all the time. And I grew up here in Northern California. And so, you know, Yosemite is a couple hours away and you can, you know, either hike coastal trails, you know, or go up in the Sierra Nevadas. And so I was, I think like 5 years old when he started really taking us out. So my brother was 8 and I was 5, and we would carry all our own stuff. We had our own backpacks, carried our own sleeping bags, everything. And then we would go out for 5 or 6 days and knock on 30 miles off of like the John Muir Trail or something. And so every summer growing up, we would do this. And you know, it's one of those things I remember on more than one occasion kind of being in a situation where I wasn't really that happy, right? Like, you know, cause you got to go over these mountains, right? That's part of the deal. And it's the totally metaphor for life too, is that when you're at the top, it's like, there's always these amazing views. I mean, you're up at the top of these mountains that are over 10,000 feet and it's just gorgeous up there. You can see so far, but hiking up it, you know, is definitely challenging. And when it's a bitch. And when you're 5 or 6 years old, like you don't really understand the whole thing, like what you're going for, you know, you're just doing it. Right. And it's fun and all that, but it's, you know, you're on day 3 or 4 and you're, you know, been sleeping out in the woods and everything. It's definitely interesting, but I feel like that has had a huge impact on me as I get older. Just the whole thing of when something gets hard, like you don't just quit, because that's the thing about backpacking is quitting it's not an option. Like it's literally, it's not like you're 20 miles away from the car and you just have to keep going on this trail. Like you I guess you could turn around and go back, but like, that's not going to be any better, you know, like
that's a quitter's mindset, right?
Yeah. Well, even if you tried, like, it doesn't really matter. Like if you're halfway, you know, on this trip and it's like, well, it's 10 miles the car either way. If you keep going,
you're screwed.
Yeah, you're fucked.
You're either going up or you're going down.
Yeah.
Huge battle.
So anyway, that's like one of those things from my childhood that really stood out. And then something else is my dad owned a business. And so when I was a kid growing up, it was the same thing. Like he ran his own company and my grandfather was an entrepreneur and started these businesses and stuff. And so the whole entrepreneurship and kind of, you know, making your own money wasn't weird to me, or it wasn't different, or it wasn't scary. It was just something some people do. Like some people just own a business, and that's how you make money and how you help people and how you do things, you know? So there's a few things from my childhood that really kind of stand out that definitely benefited me later in life, you know?
No, absolutely. And I love that metaphor that you said, about the mountain, right? Because oftentimes we're so quick to get to our destination
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
fail to enjoy the journey, enjoy the
Oh God.
process, right? And I fall
Yeah.
short of that too. And I'm telling
Oh
you,
yeah.
like, I've had my podcast for 7 months already.
Hmm.
And, so, you're a podcast host, so as you could imagine, is boom, 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 even in life, in business, right? And then you take a second, you look back, reflect, you're like, holy crap, like, this is how far I've come, right? And
Right.
you have to really slap yourself in the face and sit in those moments of gratitude, because like
Yeah.
I said, you want to get there already.
Right. And then also, not only get there, but where is there? Like there's always a next step. And, if you want to keep going on like the backpacking analogy, what happens in real life, what happens 90% of the time is there's a false summit.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're hiking up and you see the top or what appears to be the top. You're like, man, if I just like, we're almost there, and you're on these switchbacks and you just keep fucking going and going. And then you get the top and you realize like, no, it's not actually the top. That's just a false summit, right? Like it might you hit a little plateaus, be flat for a while, and then there's more up to go.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's how I feel like it is too. A lot of times you're pursuing things in life, whether it's athletic endeavors or whatever. Like when have you ever said or had the thought like, okay, well, that's good enough?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if I ever have. There's always like the next, you accomplish something you set out to accomplish, but then from there you can see the next peak.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you can't see those peaks until you get there. And so it's easy to overlook the process because you don't know when the process ends. I think if you knew like on this date or at this time, then that's it, right? Then maybe you can enjoy the process a little more because you're making progress towards that. But it's one of those things when you get to where you think you're trying to get, and all you can see from there is bigger peaks and more things to do. And it's, then it's like, okay, well, you don't really enjoy what you've accomplished a lot because now it's all right. Well, now how do I get there? Like, what's the next step, And I think there's definitely a benefit to always looking for that next step, because you don't want to just kind of rest on your laurels. You should be driving to always get better. And the whole idea of like, keep going, there is no finish line. I think there's something to all that as well. But it's also important not to let that detract from the fact that like, if you're enjoying what you're doing, then take note of that.
Of course, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, man. So your dad, had you guys backpacking, which I'm sure like in those moments you're like, why do I have to do this crap, right? But looking back, you're like, you can be appreciative and grateful, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing that kind of stuff.
And it was fun. Yeah. That's what's funny is like, you don't talk about not noticing while you're doing it. At the time, it was just what we were doing. Like, I didn't really notice that always like most other families weren't doing that. Like, it was just normal to me. Like, that's just summer, we're going on this backpacking trip, like that's kind of what we did, and then, yeah, now looking back, I'm like, oh, I guess most people didn't do that, huh?
Now, let me ask you, are you doing that with your kids? No. Do you plan
to? I haven't been, it's funny. I would like to do a little bit more of it. We go hiking, like we'll take them on little day hikes and that type of a thing, but I haven't taken them out yet. My oldest is 7 and my youngest is 3. So the 7-year-old, she could do it. She'd be good to go. The 3-year-old's not quite yet. But, I think maybe when my youngest is, 5 years old or so, and then they could both go, then maybe that's something I'll pick up again. But I think a big difference was my dad, like it was his passion. Like still is. All he wants to do. If it was up to him, he would, be John Muir style. He'd be living in the trees in Yosemite somewhere. Yeah, exactly. And so, for him, it was something he just really wanted to do and loved doing. And so he was just sharing that, with us. And I think partially is he really wanted to share it with us. And I think partially, if he was just going to disappear for 7 days in the woods and leave us kids at home alone with my mom, maybe that wouldn't have gone over so well. And so kind of he would take us as an excuse to be able to go himself. But then also enjoyed sharing with us and everything. So I don't really do much of it myself right now. But I do want to take the girls. I'm sure I'll take them as, it probably won't be an annual thing, but we'll get out there a little bit.
Do it, right?
Yeah. And maybe that's the thing there. It's like, maybe for us, it was backpacking, but maybe it doesn't have to be. Maybe it's just whatever your parents are passionate about that you should involve your kids, you know? And if you get your kids involved with what you're passionate about early, you know, they'll see that you are doing something you love and are attacking something and are, you know, if you're passionate about something, you're also probably not quitting when things get hard. You know, maybe you're really into fucking crocheting or something and you're really working on this scarf. I don't know. They see you like fuck up 7 scarves before you get one right. And there's a lesson in that, you know?
There it is.
Yeah. Do you crochet scarves? Is that how you make a scarf?
I do not, man.
No, I mean, like, is that how you make them? Like, do you
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really even know what you make when you crochet things. Doilies.
That's funny. All right, so so you saw your dad get into entrepreneurship.
No.
So did you always like imagine yourself being into the space that you are now, or were you kind of stemmed into the traditional route of education? Because I know you got a formal education as well. Can you walk through that? Yeah,
so I always thought, well, I don't know what I thought. I always knew that, like I said, you could have a business and make money for yourself, and it was no big deal. Same thing, like as a kid, my grandfather had these commercial buildings, and so over the summers, he would like, hey, I need someone to work for me, whatever. And so again, I was like 10 years old and I was helping him build these walls inside these commercial buildings because he was splitting it to, or whatever. He'd buy a house on a double lot and then build a second house and build a fence and stuff like that. So I was always working for him doing those things over the summer. So I like see like, oh, look, there's all these different things people can do to make money, right? It's not just get a job and work a 9 to 5.
Right.
But with that being said, I always got good grades. School was pretty easy for the most part. You know, and so I was just doing that. And then I'm kind of a next step person. And so that's what do you do after high school is you just go to college. I never really questioned if I should or not. You know, I never even really
something that needed to be done, right?
Yeah. And it's like, you know, it's funny. I don't think we ever had a conversation with my parents. Like, I don't think they ever said like, go to college or you have to go to, like, there was nothing like that. My mom got like a associate's degree or whatever. And my dad, it was funny. My dad was, he was like in and out of college. Like he didn't graduate, but then he had like an associate's or something. Like that was it. And then growing up, like I remember he would like sign up for a class and like do 1 or 2 classes every now and then. And so maybe that was it. I always saw him, like he always wanted to finish his degree. I feel like he felt like it was something unfinished, you know, and that maybe when things were hard in business, he kind of felt like it'd be nice if he had other choices or something. So I just, it was the next step. After high school, you go to college and so that's kind of what I was doing. And then I was coaching wrestling and I loved doing that. And so what was I going to do in school? I thought maybe be a teacher because I liked school and all that. And I always played sports, grew up playing sports. And so I thought maybe PE or something. And then I realized, well, if I want to keep coaching wrestling, I have to be a teacher because otherwise, like if I'm some desk jockey, I can't just peace out at 2:30 to go to practice, you know? So yes, that's what kind of led me down through college into the PE and being a teacher and down that path, which led me to the secondary education or graduate school for education, that type of thing. So that's kind of led my whole educational path. And then I was working as a teacher and I mean, I had a good time. Like I still say it's true, man. And like, if you got to work for somebody else, teaching high school PE that's the way to go. Like it was a pretty good gig. I had a good time. I was good at it, you know, I felt like I was good at it, but then business, you know, there's only so many hours in the day. Right. So
what made you get into entrepreneurship?
Well, so I always kind of, same thing. I always kind of knew, or I always kind of thought I want to do something. I don't know what, maybe it was, you know, buy some commercial real estate. Maybe it was whatever. Every PE teacher in the world thinks it'd be cool to own a gym, you know? So, you know, so there's all that. So then just opportunities kind of came up. and I was teaching PE, and there's another PE teacher, actually not at my school, but another school in the district, was starting this gym. And I got into CrossFit recently, and it was this CrossFit gym. So I just went and met up with him. We worked out together, and he kind of needed somebody to help him out to take some of the load in the business. They just started, and he had some kids, and I didn't have any kids yet. And so it was just an opportunity. He's like, hey, I had this business partner, and he's not really doing anything. He's kind of wants out. If you want in, just like you can get in super cheap. Just basically pay, whatever. And they had just started off too. And so I just took the opportunity. So yeah, sounds like a no-brainer, And so I just went for it. And that's kind of kicked off the whole entrepreneurial side of things then. So then I'm in the gym, and I have that going on, and that just kind of, everything I've ever done has kind of been a situation like that. There's some sort of an opportunity that's presented itself. And so you just kind of start walking down the path.
Man, that's amazing. And it's crazy. Like when you're in the perfect, place at the right time, opportunity just meets, right? And it's one of those things where you never really expect to be in that field.
Right.
And look at what happened. It opened so many doors for you.
Right. And I think that people also, there might be an opportunity, or there's the possibility of one, and then people just like stop, or you get scared off, or think like, oh, that would be great if whatever, And I think that's a big part of it too, is, when he kind of offered that, I was like, hey, this guy, I could have come up with all kinds of reasons why it was a bad idea, but I didn't. I was like, oh, that sounds great. Like, why not try it?
Were you afraid at first, like in the sense of transitioning from comfort, transitioning from the norm of what, you have that constant cash flow?
No, because at that time I was still teaching. And so I was doing the gym, and I was still teaching and all that. And I was busy, but I don't mind. I kind of like being busy. So that didn't bother me. But then as with Caffeine and Kilos, when I quit teaching, so Caffeine and Kilos really took off. And so over one summer, it just like totally took off. And so after teaching 1 year while running Caffeine and Kilos, I realized like, this is not sustainable. I was working for 2 or 3 hours before going to school. Then I was teaching at school all day. And then I was working another 2 to 3 hours. We just had a baby. And then I was working 2 to 3 hours after the baby went to bed. And it's like, this is not a long-term plan, that for a short period of time is fine. Like, it's fine. It doesn't bother me, but that's not a long-term plan if I want to, like stay married and that type of stuff.
One thing's got to give, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, and I'm can't really give up the baby. Not gonna.
Fortunately, no.
Yeah. So then I would have been comfortable just stopping teaching. And at that point, we weren't really getting paid from Caffeine and Kilos. Like for the whole first year, we didn't take a check for at least a year. And with that, everything was just going back into the business and just funding growth. But then we had, there's like a little bit here and there, but it wasn't a steady check. But I knew it was there, and I knew it was coming. But my wife's a little more conservative. So to kind of keep her happy and kind of find a middle ground, I actually went to teaching part-time. So I got a part-time teaching job that was like, I worked 2 to 3 days a week as a teacher. And so then that gave me the other 2 to 3 days a week where I could put more time into Caffeine and Kilos. And over that year of school, that's when we really got more established, and we started taking regular checks out and getting like regular pay. And then coming around to that, then it was a no-brainer at that point. I didn't have to try and convince my wife anything. She's always been real supportive, but I also understand, that some people, right? Yeah. Well, some people are a little more of a risk taker. Some people are a little more risk averse, and I think that's good. It's fine. And so that was kind of the thing. So stepping away from the teaching job, I really wasn't nervous at all, because by that point I had, seen the success I was having, and I knew there's more success in the future, and I was confident that we could do it and get the job done. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, something had to give, and it was either quit doing that or quit teaching, So it wasn't even really a choice.
Mm-hmm. I think that's important too. I mean, you were able to do obviously like what you love, and then compromise in the process, and give her that peace of mind, right?
Yeah.
What I want to know is what really inspired it from you starting Caffeine and Kilos. What inspired it, especially the name, right? It's pretty catchy.
Yeah. Well, so again, it was just opportunities. So I was competing in weightlifting for California Strength, which is the best weightlifting team in the country. They're about an hour from where I live. So I was going out there and training a couple days a week, and then training my own. So through that, I kind of knew the best weightlifters in the country. Because when you're lifting at a national level, there's only so many people kind of in that group type thing. So I know these people from all over the country. And then another gym owner, we're just kind of acquaintances. And he just calls me one day, says, "Hey man, I want to host the biggest weightlifting meet that people have seen, whatever. And I know that you know a lot of weightlifters. Like, you want to help me out with this? You want to be involved with this? Like, what can we do? Or how can we get in touch with some of these lifters and host this big meet? We want to give out a cash prize." Or he said, "How do we get him out?" I said, "Well, at this time in 2013, there's like no money. Nobody was giving cash prizes. There wasn't really sponsorships for weightlifting much." It's like, well, if we give a cash prize and a crowd from the lift in front of, people would be stoked. Like, they'd fly out from wherever. And so he's like, "All right, well, what does this look like?" And so we just kind of started piecing together what this event would look like to hold a competition and get the best lifters from around the country to come out. And we did. We got a bunch of lifters out. We got that the second year we did it, we actually even got some Olympians out, like all kinds of stuff. And so it was just kind of like, well, let's do this meet. It sounds like fun. And it was the beginning of the summer. And so I was teaching at that time, so I had a little bit of time. And so, yeah, let's do that. So we start just kind of, okay, what's the next step down the path, right? So as opportunities present themselves, so it's like, okay, well, we need a venue. And so we went and let's go look at some places, kind of see if this place works. And then we go and we look, and they have a date that worked for us. And it's like, oh, well, let's do it. We got to pay right then and there, right? You got to pay to book it. And at this point, it wasn't like a company. It was just, we were just some bros, they were going to host this event. And this is all right. And so we just kind of booked it. Like, I just put on the credit card, just booked out whatever, $7,000 for this event, for this venue. But it was, I didn't see it as a risk, because I knew, I was like, well, we're going to have a fitness competition, a CrossFit style competition during the day. And we're going to have teams. And, if we can only get X amount of teams, then, we'll make that off their entry fees. And I was confident we could do that. Like, oh yeah, we'll get that many teams. It'll be fine. So I didn't look at it like putting money out there, going on a limb. It was just like very temporary thing. Oh yeah, this will be here. And in a couple of months, we'll sell these spots and get the money back, and no big deal. Right. Just kind of like, what's the next step that you need to take to make these things happen? Mm-hmm. So that was kind of one thing. And then simultaneously, the other guy, he posted this picture. He was going to make a t-shirt for himself, like on Shirt Press or some shit. And it just said "My Life." And it had a coffee mug and a guy lifting weights. And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to make one. Does anybody else want one of these?" And there's this huge response. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I want one." And so he said, "Well, maybe I'm onto something." So he started talking to this guy, Dean, who's the third founder. And Dean is just like, he knows fashion. He knows what's cool. He's just got the whole thing going on. I said, "Hey man, I want to make these shirts, something like this." And then Dean kind of looked at it, and we talked about it, and he kind of came up, he does all of our designs. He came up with the design.
Yeah, I love the designs. You're sick, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Colors, it's very like, I don't know, it's stylish, hipsterish. And then obviously like obviously gym wear, right?
Right. Yeah. The thing is, we basically make streetwear. We sell it in the fitness industry. Right. So it's like,
mix some coffee into that, even better.
Some coffee into it. Yeah. So that was kind of things. So at first there were two ideas, like, oh yeah, we'll have this event and then we'll make these shirts, Caffeine and Kilos. And then we realized, we're like, oh, it's the same fucking idea. Right. And so that was kind of how that kind of came together in that route.
I love it. So when did you realize that you had something? Like you said, you started it, you weren't paying your guys' salary for about a year, but when did you realize, like, was it the feedback that you were hearing? Was
Oh
it
man.
response? Like, what was it?
Well, Caffeine Kills is crazy because there wasn't like this big ramping up period. There wasn't this like years of struggle. It was, we had these shirts that everyone loved the design. We were going to host this event, and basically what it turned into was the event was a launch party for the brand.
Oh shoot.
And so, yeah, it kind of, again, it's like, just keep walking down this path and things present themselves. And so, I mean, we got, 10 of the best weightlifters in the country to lift in this meet. And so, or 20, I think 10 men, 10 women, 20 of the best weightlifters in the country to lift in this meet. And so they're all talking about they're going to go lift in this meet and get paid a cash prize, and they're going to lift in front of this crowd. So they're all stoked. And so they're all wearing the stuff and like post. It was, we basically were doing influencer marketing before that was a term, because this was 2013. And so, Facebook, Instagram had just started recently, and that type of thing. So we kind of got in right at that time. And then same thing, like it's like the classic influencer marketing playbook, but at the time it wasn't. And we just, anybody we knew around the country that had some clout in either CrossFit or weightlifting or powerlifting, we just sent us some stuff. We just sent stuff out to our friends. Hey, if you like this, wear it,
Free advertisement for them too, right?
Oh, they were stoked. Yeah, they were excited about it. And it was that's kind of how it really got a foothold early on. And then also we live streamed it. We live streamed the event. So then it's like, all right, well, what is going on here? Who are these guys? And who is this company they're hosting this weightlifting meet, and they're giving away this, this $10,000 cash prize. And there's all this, it's like this, they got all these best lift people are flying out to lift in this meet. You start seeing the stuff all over Instagram if you're in kind of our space. And so that was kind of the whole, just out of nowhere, it just kind of popped up. And so the company just took off. Like it was like we started selling stuff online before the event even happened, because there's such demand for it. And so it just kind of shot up. So as more than like, when did we know it was time, or when did we know that we had something? It was more of just like, we're fucking hanging on, like figure it out as you go, it's like, you're fixing the race car as it's going around the track.
Mm-hmm. And what advice can you give our entrepreneurs that are watching that maybe are starting a business and starting something? And like you said, like usually it there's a misconception where, it's crazy because we get into the space of entrepreneurship to make money, right?
Right.
But then we find ourselves not making money for the first 2, maybe even third year. And we don't want to work corporate because we're wasting our time putting in 40 hours a week, and we find ourselves even putting in 60, 80 hours a week. So it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But what I want to understand is, what tips, what advice can you give them when it comes to maybe them, transitioning out of corporate to pursue their passion, their purpose, and, to play the long game in this case?
Yeah. So it's funny. I actually made up a word earlier this year. My business coach is asking like, what's your one word? And I've heard other people do this too, is they say, okay, like pick one word for the year, and that's what you focus on, And I was like, man, I know that I do really well if I plan something and then just execute on the plan. But like, if you don't execute day by day on the plan, then there's no point in having the plan, right? The same thing, if you just every day, all you're focused on is what's in front of you, then that's not going to work well either. And so I say that the key is you have to plexecute, right?
Ooh,
So,
I love that.
Do you? I don't really know if I do, but yeah. So plexecute. So that's things you have to make the plan and then execute on the plan. And so that's with everything. So if you say you have a corporate job still, or whatever your job is, you're teaching, whatever it is, if you want to get out, you want to pursue something else. Well, so then you can, instead of saying, a lot of people get caught in like the one day or when, I'll do this when. Well, when it hits, when it hits a certain amount of revenue, then I can quit, or when this, then I can quit. Well, the truth is, like, what you're guessing is probably wrong. Whatever revenue you think is going to support a salary for you is probably not true. Like, other costs increase as well. Even if it's like these are my fixed costs. Then after that, it's all profit. It's never fucking all profit after that. That's for
Not
sure.
at all.
Yeah. Like your variable costs will arise. Like there's no doubt. And so I think the key is you actually plan it out. Say, okay, well, if I want to be done by December, then that means I need to have the business to this point at that time. And then you just back that out. So you say, okay, well, if I need to be making that much money, then I need to be doing how much revenue before that and how much revenue before that. And you can kind of plan month by month. And then instead of then like, well, what does that mean? Well, you can look at your stats. Like if you're doing, say, e-commerce, if you're selling things online, okay, well, what's your like revenue per website visitor, right? And it's like, okay, well, if on average you get so many, whatever, it's 3 cents a visitor or some shit. It's like, okay, well, how many people on the website do you need in order to make that revenue, right? And then what else can you tweak within that? Like, what KPIs, what numbers do you need to hit in order to make that a reality? And then, so you just back that out, and that's kind of where you can find like, what's the next step to take? So, okay, well, if now we're getting lots of traffic, but the revenue hasn't increased that much, it's okay, well, you need to work on your conversion rates, right? Or it's like, if you're have really high conversion rates, but then what do you do to make more revenue? Well, you need to drive more traffic to the website. So how do you do that? And that's really what it is. It's just the whole time you just look at things, say, okay, well, if I want X, like what needs to happen for that, right? Like what's the next step I need to take to get to X? And then it's just whatever that next step is. So, I mean, sit down with the calendar and actually write it down, write when you want to be done, write what you need to do to make that happen, and then the steps that it takes to get there. And then just every day you get up and you look at that calendar and you say, okay, what is coming up today that I need to accomplish, that I need to do? And you just follow that through.
You guys heard it first. Take massive action.
Well,
most importantly, after you plan it out,
yeah.
You take massive action.
What you absolutely cannot do is nothing.
You're right. And it's crazy that you say that, because, it reminds me of a post that I posted, I think it was about a week and a half ago. It says, what are you doing in this time of quarantine, right? And if you're not working on your mind, your knowledge, building relationships, a skill set, your passion, whatever it is, you didn't lack time, you lack discipline. And especially right now in this place with COVID-19, stay at home, it's a plain even field, right? Like this is the perfect opportunity. And you can't sit there and say, I don't have time. Well, this, well, that. Right now is the perfect opportunity to force you out of your comfort zone, to force you to live it up, to pivot and adapt and try something new, right? You don't know unless you try it.
Yeah. And it's like, you know what? if somebody doesn't, if you don't want to, like, if you want to during quarantine, if you just want to sit on the couch and eat bonbons and watch Days of Our Lives, like, that's fine. But then don't complain about not having what you want in life, right? Like, if you're not happy with where you are, then fucking do something about it, you know? And so that's the catch there is it's if you want something, now's a great time to go for it. And like you said, the even playing field, I've said that a handful of times. From a business standpoint, like, this is actually really interesting because the paradigm has completely changed. Big businesses are actually spending less money on advertising because they're worried about their marketing, which then lowers the costs of marketing. And so it's like, if you don't have to have a lot of money, if you just get an ad that works well, like, now you can actually get ads for cheaper than, in the last 5-6 years, probably. And so anybody who's starting off in whatever you're doing, like, now's a great time to get in front of people. And what everyone's thinking, what everybody's going through, you can relate to everybody, and everybody can relate to you. So, like, the messaging and what you want to say to people and what you want to get across and how you want to introduce yourself, like, this is a great opportunity. And it's a time where creativity pays off. And so for somebody starting off, or smaller, more nimble companies, this is a great time because you can be creative and nobody expects things to be perfect because they know that you're just trying things for the first time and they appreciate that you are trying things. So I think that it's a great time to take advantage. I also think that it's always a good time to start, like, there's never really a
perfect time, right?
Well, yeah, there's never a perfect time. And there's also, like, really, there's never a bad time. There's never a bad time to start something or to try something new.
So considering the times that we are in with COVID-19, right? Like, the last couple of months, businesses are forced to shut their doors, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's gyms, businesses, how can gym owners and or businesses pivot in the times that we are in, especially once it's lifted? Like, what advice can you give them? What tips can you give them? What are some strategies that you are using with your business to sustain it?
Communication is the number one thing. I think the biggest problem people have, and honestly, I could be better at this. I've been communicating with the gym, but not as frequently as I probably should. I mean, I've been at least once a week. I'm making sure to get a hold of people and send emails out, and everyone kind of has a coach. Our coaches are getting out to people more. But I mean, there's so many unknowns right now. We don't know when quarantine is going to be lifted. We don't know what businesses are going to be open. We don't know when the gym's going to be open. There's so many unknowns, and that's what causes anxiety in people. It's the not knowing is worse than even if knowing bad news, And so it's just, you have to let people know. And if you don't know the answer, it's okay to say, like, I still don't know when we're going to be allowed to open our doors again, but I do know. And then you talk about other things that are going on. They want to know, your customers or clients, everyone, they want to know that you exist. They want to know that you care, and they want to know that you're going to be there when it's over, And that's a big message I just keep putting out there is, this too will pass. Everything does. This too will pass. We're all gonna be together again. We're all gonna be working out again. And this is what, in the meantime, this is what you can do. So you provide them with everything you can in the meantime, all the online classes, live streaming workouts, all that stuff. But then but everyone can do that. I think the key is you got to communicate with people and show them that you care, and show them that they will have a gym to go back to. I mean, it's funny, we've been spending money in the gym doing things, like we got this big ass mural painted. We were painting another wall that needed some help.
Right now?
Oh yeah, my gym. Yeah, like we're putting money.
You're grinding.
Oh yeah, we bought like more equipment. Like we bought some new rowers. We bought so we've actually, during quarantine, we're there. I want them to come back, and I want it to be like a shiny new car. I don't want anybody walking in and feeling like it's the fucking Addams Family house with cobwebs and no one's been there. I want people excited to come back, and when they come back, that they can see that, and they see that we weren't just sitting around, whatever. Like, I want them to come back and see that we were doing things, improving the place, making it better. You want them excited to be back. And so tell them that, just communicate, hey, this is what we did this week. We got brand new climbing ropes that we put up today, and just keep people excited to come back.
So I'm really interested on getting your point. Like, for instance, like our studio, we're at a gym facility right now. So of course the gym is shut down. We're in Long Beach, California.
Yep.
But for instance, we have a lot of personal trainers, right? This is their main source of income. And a lot of them obviously do, person to person, interaction training. So maybe what are some tips, advice that you can give when it comes to transitioning to maybe virtual, or maybe starting an online business? Because I know a lot of them now, like, it's completely out of their comfort zone, and they have been forced to pivot and adapt into virtual training. What is your take on that?
I think that the biggest problem is that people need to be comfortable talking to a camera and being comfortable on film. And that's something that a lot of people aren't. And a good example is
I could attest to that too.
Yeah.
I'm a host, but I still say, hey, you know what? Shoot me a video, get in the camera. I'm like, it takes me like 15 tries. I'm not even joking.
Yeah. And I see it as my daughter, my 7-year-old, takes piano lessons, and she's had to do Zoom piano lessons. And she's awkward as shit, like she's sitting there, and it's, and it's funny, like in person, like she knows the piano teacher, like she's been going for like 2.5 years, this guy. And then like now she's sitting here, and it's like looking at a screen, and she's like when she talks, she's like quiet, like asks questions quietly. She doesn't respond. It's just weird. She's 7 years old. Like, she's not used to talking on the phone with people a lot. She's not used to doing a lot of she's done some video Skype stuff, but like not a lot, And so it's the same probably for a lot of people who just haven't done much video. And so you're sitting here, and you have to Zoom with people, you have to talk to them, and it's awkward, because you're not used to doing it. And so I think a big thing is getting that experience talking. And so there's a few tips for that. Is one, and people might think you're weird, but fuck them. So when you, instead of texting, like you're going to text one of your friends or someone who you're not worried about them, their opinion of you too much, is instead of just sending a text, do a little selfie video and send it to them. You can do this on Instagram DMs. Instead of just sending off DMs, even just record yourself talking. Like hit the record button, record yourself talking, or record a selfie video to them and send that. And if someone's like, hey, why didn't you just text that? Why'd you like send me that selfie video? It's like, oh man, I need to get more comfortable talking to the camera for my clients, whatever. Or just say like, because I wanted to, like, whatever. You don't owe anybody an explanation.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, exactly. So I think that that's really good. It's just getting comfortable in front of the camera is the most important thing, because your client, they're going to be as comfortable as you are. Mm-hmm. And if you're sitting there and you're doing the Zoom call with them and they're going to be a little awkward. And if you're a little awkward, they're going to be more awkward. So if you're comfortable, if you're just talking to them, having a conversation, acting like it's normal, if you're comfortable having this interaction, that's going to put them at ease and they're going to be more comfortable with it. And that's what it's all about, is you just don't want it to be, how do you make it not awkward for them? And
more organic, right? And conversational, right?
Right. Exactly. And so I think that's the, and another thing is too, people get weird. Like if they're in their house, like do they see is my counter, behind me all fucked up, whatever. Yeah. And so I think also like address that. You don't just talk to them the whole time and like try not to bring up something that's going on behind them or whatever. You just tell them, like, point out at your place. Maybe you're like, oh, I'm sorry, whatever. I know there's a bunch of, whatever, the sink's piled up with dishes. Hopefully you don't see that in the background. And if you say that, something like that, then they'll like be like, oh yeah, my house is a total mess too. But then now they're not worried about it. Instead of in the back of their mind, they're in their bedroom or something and like the bed's all fucked up. Instead of being like the whole time, like, they can't concentrate because they're just thinking about how you're seeing this mess in their house. Well, now that's been addressed. Now they can let that go. Right. So I think that, right off the bat, you just address the things about it that are awkward and try and set them at ease. And the more comfortable you are on camera, the more comfortable they're going to be talking back to you through the camera.
Absolutely. So what are some tips and tactics when it comes to building a successful and thriving brand? Whether it's online, through social media, YouTube.
Yeah, well, so I think that the being on brand is the most important thing to that. So you got to decide what the fuck the brand is. Like, what does it mean? What does it stand for? What are your morals and ideals? And what is it all about? And if you know that, then that's just what you do. And I think that if you stand, it's like it's a cliche, but it's like how's it go? I guess not that much of a cliche if I can't remember off the top of my mind. But basically, if you stand for everything, you stand for nothing, right? And I think that that's important. I think that you can't be afraid to be polarizing. You can't be afraid to be yourself. And in fact, I would even say maybe you should be polarizing, right? Like, what's the most popular thing that's been on TV in the last 6 months? It's been fucking Tiger King. It's like, why? Because the dude's nuts. The guy's crazy. And I'm not saying you should be Tiger King. Like, people don't like him, but the point is the reason why it has that draw and that allure and everybody watches it because it's so crazy. It's so far like polarizing to one side, And there's this book by Seth Godin that's called This Is Marketing. And the number one message in that he keeps saying over and over again is people like this do things like that. Right? Or people like me do things like this. People like us do things like this. People like us do things like this. And I think that's what you keep in mind is when you're building the brand, right? So like, who will this brand resonate with? And like, if you say everybody, well, then you probably don't have a shot. You're spinning your wheels. Like fucking Nike doesn't resonate with everybody, right? And so that's the thing is decide who is the brand for? What does the brand represent? And then do not waver from that. Like figure out what you want to do and do it. And then you can expand to other markets or other, adjacent verticals, if you want to like use that terminology, like other people that are like, but you can't go the complete opposite, right? Like if you're in a brand in fitness and you sell coffee and you talk about how coffee is a natural pre-workout and how caffeine is a clean workout and there's a benefit to that, then like you shouldn't sell fucking Twinkies. And like, or reach out to the Twinkie eating crowd. you know, like that.
Stay in your lane,
Stay in
right?
stay in your lane, or just know, like, decide again what your brand is, what it stands for, and who it's for. And then, like, there you go. And then stay true to that. And I think that's where you're going to have success. Anytime we've had things falter or things haven't really worked out for whatever reason, because flops happen. Sometimes you do stuff and it's funny. Sometimes you're like, oh, it's going to be great. And then it's like, nobody cares. And every time that's happened, in hindsight, looking back, it's like, well, what went wrong? And almost every time it just doesn't quite fit our market. You know, we look at like, oh, well, let's say we release a collection and then we think it's great, but then like just kind of flops. No one really, it's not like a big hit. It's kind of just trickles out over the course of a couple months. And we thought, we're like, oh, this shit's going to sell out in an hour. And it's like, no, it was around for months. We look back at it and we look at what we did and like, oh, well, here's all these marketing images for it. And none of these resonate at all with our customers. They're all these pictures of people doing things that like our clientele doesn't do. Right. And so there's this, you know, this line where it's like, yeah, sometimes you want to try and reach other markets or other people or see, oh, like some of our customers like this or whatever. But, you know, just stay true to who you are and what you want to do, and just make sure everything you put out there is on brand, true to the message, and you'll be good. And that Seth Godin, This Is Marketing book is fantastic. It's amazing for this. And talks about, you know, basically go to the edges, like find the edges. And then that's where you're going to find people who actually care.
I love that. I got to check out that book, man. Thank you for
really good
recommending it. So what are some of your secrets when it comes to sustaining success and a fulfilling career?
Well, sustaining success, you can never think that like good enough is never good enough, right? Like there's no such thing as good enough. Like things can always be better. And that's true about everything. Like there's not a single thing, like this might be hard for people to hear. Like there's not a single thing you're doing that is as good as it can possibly be. And that's just a fact. Like everything can always be better. And I think if you keep that mindset, then you'll continue to improve. I think that a lot of times when people have problems sustaining some success is that they get to a point and they get comfortable and they back off and they stop trying to improve. And when you stop trying to improve, you're done. And so that's true in the gym. You know, it's like if you own a gym, you know, every day you should say, okay, like what can we make better? What can I make better? How can I be a better trainer? How can my trainers be better? How can the gym be nicer? What, you know, like what's broken? What can be fixed? What needs to improve? How can we run our classes more efficiently? How can our personal trainers, like what can they do to get, you know, better clients or get more clients, right? And so, or if it's e-commerce, it's the same thing. It's like, honestly, it's funny. You know, we were supposed to be on this call like 15 minutes earlier and then there's traffic, no problem at all. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, well, I got like half an hour now. I thought I had 15 minutes. And I went and I started, actually like made an improvement to our order confirmation email. Right. And it's like, we've had this online store for 7 years. And anyways, but I was like, oh, well, that's something that came up not too long ago. I heard someone mention something about order confirmation emails. I'm like, you know what? I think ours could definitely be better. Like I haven't looked at that in probably a year or two. And so I went on there and I revamped our order confirmation email, you know, and it's things like that. It's like the things that may seem like a small thing or like, oh, it's good. And there's nothing wrong with our old one. It wasn't bad or whatever, but just how can it be better?
But it's still sitting in the back of your mind, right? Like, you know, okay, it could, you know, use some tweaking, but it just takes you actually taking that step to take initiative and get it done, right?
That's it. What can you be doing better? You know, and the second thing is I really believe in educating yourself, right? Listening to podcasts, reading books. And people sometimes, you know, talk about reading books and they really listen to the audiobooks. That's fine. Listening to audiobooks is way better for sure than not, right? But I think there's also something to be said for actually reading a book. I think it's a different, because I usually listen to podcasts. I try to read books, but because when I listen to audiobooks, what happens is I'm driving in the car and all of a sudden I'm like 5 miles down the road and I'm like, what the fuck have they been talking about? You know, like you zone out, that type of thing kind of happens,
Like,
you know? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I should probably. And so, you know, I think that, you know, just you should always be like reading, trying to educate yourself, making yourself better, and working on always tweaking everything about the business to improve that as well.
What are some things that you're currently learning to test your creativity?
Oh, I need to learn how to write. I don't think that I'm definitely better. I'm getting better all the time, but I want to be a better writer. And really that's just a better communicator. And if you learn to write better, you learn to communicate better. And it's funny, even though most of the stuff I've been reading and learning about writing is a lot of it has to do with actually creative writing. Like if I was writing a novel, like a fictional novel, which I don't plan on doing. But it's just like the tips and the tricks and the things they do and the way you word things. It's all about communicating with somebody. Like the way you write something down. One of the books I recently read, they talked about like he just feels bad for the reader. Like always take pity on the reader. Assume the person reading this has no fucking idea what you're talking about, because they probably don't. So like, how can you be more clear? Right. And so sometimes just even where you place words and sentences can either make things murky or more clear. It's like you say like, hey, you want to paint that wall red or green? And they reply, yes. It's like, all right, well, fuck, I don't know what you mean by yes. Like, do you mean yes red or yes green, right? And so it's like things like that. And then just being aware of that, I'll find even in text messages now when I'll type a text and be like, oh, he's going to read this. He's not going to know what exactly I'm asking, or it's not going to be clear what I'm asking, or my answer isn't going to be clear, right? And so how I've been doing that is I bought one book on writing, and then I read it over the course of a weekend. And then in that book, he of course talks about 2 or 3 books that he recommends or that he helped him be a better writer. So then I bought those
books.
And that just kind of leads down this path. And so now it's been, 5 or 6 weekends in a row, like every weekend I've read another book about writing. And so that's been really beneficial. And I've noticed just over those 5 weeks, my writing is greatly improved. Because even if you think you don't write a lot, like you do, like people actually write more now than they ever have because of text messages and emails and stuff.
Yeah.
And so even if it's just like a little email to your business partner or your coworker or a text message to your mom, whatever, like the more clear you can make yourself, the better it's going to be for everybody.
Absolutely. I was on a mastermind call yesterday with Billy G Marketing.
Yep.
And he says that the same thing. He made a point. He's like, you have to get clear to the
Yeah.
point you not dumb it down, but bring it to a 5th grade level to the point you understand. And if you can knock it out in like one sentence, like within 15 seconds to explain what you're doing, you got it. If you got to over explain, you're overcomplicating things. Right?
Yeah. I think a lot of people, you know, it's like, especially if you like to read people, I think they try to sound smart. So they try using bigger words or a more complex sentence structure or whatever, trying to sound more intelligent, or they think it sounds better. But no, actually like simpler words and more succinct sentences, like shorter, more direct sentences sound better. Like, you know what sounds good? When people know what the fuck you're saying. Sounds
Less
good.
is more.
Less is more. Less is more. And it's funny, it's the little things. Next time you write a sentence, if it has the word that in the sentence, you can probably take it out. Right? Like, I think that it's time. It's like, well, I think it's time. You probably just take the word that straight out of it. And then you read it and you're like, oh, that's a lot more clear. Like, that's a lot easier to read. Right. And so it's like, it's small things like that, but like, that's what being a better communicator is you want people to be able to see what you're trying to say and understand what you're trying to say. The more people understand it without having to think too much about it, the better it's going to be.
So what made you get into podcasting? Like, what made you, like, you and your business partner at that point realize, okay, you know what, we need to take this to the next level? Oh man, I've actually a few times I've had like little podcast things over time. Things have kind of fallen into different directions, and it was kind of that same thing as we were just talking about different things going on and just doing different things. Said, oh, you know what, let's do a podcast. Let's just start one. And so that's really was it. It was just kind of something to do. And we were always, it's funny, we would have these conversations all the time with other people or sometimes just us.
And then like people would bring it up, like, oh man, you should do a podcast, talk about this or whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, yeah, sure. Why not? I'm like, let's do it. And so that was kind of it. So it's funny. The podcast is called Station Cappuccino. And really it's just the same conversations that Dean and I have in the warehouse every single day. That we just sit down in front of microphones and have those same conversations. So it's like, it's everything from fitness to nutrition to things have nothing to do with fitness and nutrition, everyday life stuff. Whatever's going on. We seem to talk about Harambe a lot, the gorilla, the guy shot, so it's, I don't know. So everything's kind of all over the place, but it's, people seem to like it. I think that they like, it's, who it's for. It's for people just like us. Like, it's for people in our market. It's for people who, if you're into caffeine and kilos, if you're into lifting weights and drinking coffee and really just fitness as a lifestyle, then it's the same conversations you probably have or things that you think about, and that's what, for us, is what's all about. It's like, how can we just promote a lifestyle of fitness, right? Just like a healthy, active lifestyle. And that's the main part.
No, I think it's great that you guys are able to bring it to another platform, right? Whether it's YouTube,
right,
or all the podcast streaming platforms. I think it's great. And it's very smart of you guys. So what is next for you guys? What is next for Caffeine and Kilos?
Well, so we are just going to keep doing the things that we're doing well, right? Like the apparel is great. Like what we do with that, it's like, everything looks clean. It's like, has a streetwear look, something people are proud to wear, proud to represent. You feel cool when you put it on. And then so we're just going to keep pushing forward at that. And then with the coffee, we have this coffee of the month, and the coffee of the month, when we implemented that, it was just a huge change. Like the coffee sales just really shot up because people like that different blend every month. And then, so that's going to keep going. And for us, the next thing is we want to keep working that coffee of the month and improving that. And then we are going to get into a little bit more of, I guess you say supplements, right? So we have one, it's called Clearly Caffeine. So Clearly Caffeine is a caffeine only pre-workout. So it's like,
I'd love to try that, man.
Yeah. And so it's like sometimes I want to take a pre-workout, but I don't really want my scalp to itch, And
so feel like your palms are like full of needles.
Yeah, kind of weird. Right. But caffeine has been proven time and time again to be beneficial for exercise. So it's like, it's just natural flavors in caffeine, right? So it's like the caffeinated LaCroix. And so that's been going great, and people really like that. So there's a few other things that are similar to that. They're still on brand. They're very true to brand. That just kind of makes sense that I think people it would really benefit from. There are things that either nobody else, like that's something like no one else is really making that. Like no one makes just like caffeine only, pre-workout. Everything has a bunch of bullshit in it. So there are things that our audience would like, and what that really comes down to, there are things that we would like. It's something where I might be like, man, I wish someone made this because I want it. And it's like the odds are if you want it, then other people do too. If you are in your market. And that's really been one of our biggest benefits is that we are our own market. We're not trying to sell shit to a group of people and imagining what they like. Is that we do the things that our audience does, that our customers do. Like we work out, we eat healthy, we're living this healthy, active lifestyle. And so it's really just what are other things that either other people aren't making that will help, or things that people are making, but we think they're not doing a very good job of. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what's next for Caffeine and Kilos, just expanding the breadth of what we offer, not just the depth.
I'm excited, man. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for your time.